my name is Chrissy Clements. Everyone watches AccessTV.org.
Hello, today I'd like to welcome you to the challenge. My name is Brian Johnson. As usual, we have a great guest today. And on the challenge, what we try to do is encourage you as an individual to get involved on whatever level you can, whatever you want to do or whatever you want to be. We challenge you to go ahead and do that. Get up and get out there and do something to make this community a better place. Our guest today is Vern Mitchell. He's a resident, he grew up in Hartford, and he's going to talk to us today about becoming an author. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Vern.
Morning, Brian.
How you doing today, Vern?
Good, very good.
All right, so what we like to do here is kind of get information about our guests. So let's start with where you grew up at. Where did you grow up at?
Well, actually, I'm a Hartford native, as you alluded to. I grew up Vine Street, hung out as a kid in the square and Stowe Village for all those old timers who know what that is. I grew up in Hartford when it was a different time. I still live. I live right outside the Hartford area now in East Hartford, but I still call myself a Hartford native.
Okay.
Resident.
What was the city like when you were growing up compared to what it's like today?
I think that statement is more about not just Hartford City, but society in general. You know, the village raising a child was real when I was coming up. You know, I played a couple of blocks over. We had street, games. You know, our street played against the other street. We got, depending on what time of year it was, it'd be baseball, football, basketball. And the parents of my friends was like my parent. You know, I had gotten whoopings away from home and scolding, and then by the time I got home, the call had already beat me there. That was a real time, and it was it created a feeling of community, so that it wasn't until I was a grown adult that I realized that financially we was poor, because spiritually we were so rich. It was a great time.
All right. So today we're talking about, I mentioned that you were an author, so we're going to talk about some books that you wrote.
Okay.
And reading is something that I love to read. And let's just talk about the books that you wrote. Let's start with either one, okay, and then we can talk about that book.
Well, first of all, let me tell you that these two books that self-published by my own publishing company, Mystery Productions, established in 2006. These two particular pieces are what I call the shh series. The shh being the elephants in the room, the things that nobody want to talk about. Mm-hmm. And they were both therapeutic exercises initially. The first book, this book called The Shh of Corporate America, began as a therapeutic exercise. So what happened, I had left another insurance company. I won't tell who they are on the air. I will say that pretty much they all the same, and I still work for an insurance company. But I had gotten really tired of the lies and manipulation and some of the things that was going on. And so to vent, I did so in writing, and I wrote, I don't know, maybe 100,000 words. And so I let my wife read it, And she said, there's some messages in here. And I think one of the things about being an author is you have some creative leadway. Some things that you can say creatively that maybe you can't get away with saying. Like if I had gone to my manager and said some of the things that are in the book, I probably would have, gotten fired.
Right.
Leaving is one thing. Getting fired, that's an entirely different thing for me. So the writing was a way to vent, but also everything I write has a message. And the message in this book, Corporate America, was really about how we in society have allowed this to happen. And we have become so dependent on the corporation for lifestyles that don't necessarily add to you in any way spiritually, just materially.
Right.
And so so now where we used to work to live, right? Now we live to work. And if your manager says, listen, I know you had plans this weekend, but you need to change those, that's what we do. Because we got we got 2 car notes, we got a mortgage, we got flat screens in every room.
Right.
And so we become slaves to those, and as a result, we've allowed ourselves to be treated in a manner we wouldn't normally allow ourselves to be treated. So this is really a satire. Pokes fun at some of the things that we subject ourselves to in the name of,
your employment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you experience some of this, or is it kind of like what you saw happen to others, or?
No, I directly experienced this.
Experienced.
And I have to say, I need to caveat this by first saying that I am not a fit in the environment that I'm in. And what I mean by that is, I've never really prospered in an environment where I'm sitting all day. I'm a conduit for corporate lies, because that's what the corporations are about, whatever it takes to get that bottom line dollar. And so I've been fighting against myself for over 30 years, because I've been in this industry for about 35 years now. And so some of this is a direct relation to being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
And some of that goes back to some of the conversations you've had with me about the positions that we put ourselves in, because what happened was I have a family, 2 kids, married, 2 kids, and so I had to support them. I lived in Hartford. I lived in the insurance capital of the world.
Right.
So I ended up gravitating to where there was a job. But I never did anything to further expound on my own creativity. What was it I wanted to do with my life?
Right.
I just want to make a dollar, support my family, and there's nothing wrong with that. I actually think that there's a huge value in the fact that I was willing to subject myself to some things that I'm not really appreciative of in order to support my family. And we're supposed to do. Those kids didn't come here. They didn't ask to come here.
Right.
I'm required to take care of them. So, over the years, I got more experience. I'm very knowledgeable in the insurance industry in the area that I work, but I'm a square peg in a round hole. So yes, this was directly related to my own experience with this particular insurance company, and I've done guest speaks at several places, the libraries, a couple of places. Everyone identifies with the inner workings of the control issue.
Right. I mean, but I guess that's the element of being able to run a successful business. One of the things that you mentioned is that you do have to make that decision how our society is set up. You go to school, and at 18, you select a college and you select a career, and it's at the time that you're kind of finding yourself. Mm-hmm. And then, at 30, you might decide that you want to do something else. Your feedback from like corporate America, has any persons or people in management have given you any feedback or given you a take on the book?
No, but I will tell you that recently in my current place of employment, I had an issue that required intervention by human resources in their legal department. And one of the things that the legal representative said to me is that corporate America is designed to test and push your moral values every single day. She said, beyond asking you to do something illegal, You're asked to do things that go against your moral principles all the time, and we do that for money. And you raised the point about, we come out of school, we go to college, we decide on a career, and I think that's part of the problem, is that we go thinking about the end result is making money. And I think that if the result, but nobody's telling us that at 18, right? If the real intent of going to school is to broaden ourselves and the perspective of who we are, right, we'll find a way to support ourselves. But we go to, we take the courses, to take the curriculums to make the dollar. And so the dollar becomes the focus,
right,
and not my improvement of me as a person or as a character.
Right.
And ironically, I'm having this discussion with you. I'm still working for an insurance company, but I'm trying to do something about that today.
Right. Now, is race a factor in what you see in corporate America, or is it just the dollar the overwhelming influence on how these decisions are made? Because I've been in the corporate environment, and the racial makeup is indicative, I guess, of the country as far as opportunities. I work in a Fortune 500 company, and let's face it, the management is not of color. It's just not. And there's a few African Americans, and I can honestly say that I know no Hispanics in the area that I work in. So do you think race is a strong component in some of the corporate decisions?
I think you alluded to this right up front, was that the race component is a component of our society. The corporate environment is no different than what's going on in our society. The same people who are running the world are running our corporations, overwhelmingly. It's the same people who always have. You talked about people of color, but really there's one faction of folks who's still running everything, and that are white males.
Right.
So it's not just, for a while when there was, there was huge talk about diversity, and there was talk about, quota systems. So what they did to be in compliance, hire more women, right? But the ceiling, they could still see the glass ceiling.
Right.
That hasn't changed, in my perspective. That hasn't necessarily changed. And over the years, there have been some, some CEOs, of color that you've seen. But overwhelmingly, the people who are still running, in my mind, are still white males, and that hasn't changed. So I don't think that I think the proponent of, or the idea of corporate America is because understand that America itself is a corporation,
right?
The biggest corporation in the world. And the corporation is about one thing: it's about making money. It's about satisfying shareholders and stockholders. And in this case, in corporate America, the shareholders and stockholders are the 4 or 5% of folks that are sitting at the top. Because you'll find, and every year when they come out, the papers reveal bonuses for top heads of companies. So the companies don't do well, but CEOs are still getting,
right,
extraordinary amounts of bonuses, and we talk about that in this book as well. And that hasn't changed. It's not going to change.
All right. So I want to move on to the writing process and being an author. So if you were to say, just your assessment, corporate America, is it good? Is it a good thing that we have corporations, or they can't be all bad?
No, they can't, because we still have to support ourselves.
Right.
I think they don't have to be how they are, and I think from that perspective, the issue isn't the folks who are in control. Why would they relinquish control voluntarily?
Right.
That's not going to happen.
Right.
In terms of connecting this to writing and being an author, one of the reasons that I do write is because it gives me a place to have a voice to air my feelings through creative characters. I write fiction. I haven't written anything nonfiction yet. So everything is fiction, but there's a like Aesop. Every fable has a tale. Every tale has a moral finding at the end. So that's true of this book. It's also true of the book that I just recently published. And again, I call this part of the series. This is the of addiction, and it's called DOA, Collector of Souls. DOA is a play on that acronym because everybody that sees it says, "Oh, death on arrival," but the acronym actually stands for disease of addiction.
Okay.
And the book goes into saying that DOA, or the disease of addiction, enjoys that acronym because it's true. Whenever she's involved, people die, and I wrote this as a result too of my own experiences. I'm a recovering addict. I've been drug free for going on 10 years now, and a lot of that was a reflection of some of the messages that I didn't get. You know, some of the things like what you're trying to do here with Access TV and the Challenge program, and bringing to light so many different ways that we can be heard. Even though people aren't reading books as much as they used to, there's different mediums. There still has to be the word. Somebody still has to write the word. So all the TV shows, the movies, whether it's through Kindle, somebody still has to write the words. And so writing is a great way to deliver messages, to have a voice. It's also a great way to leave a legacy. And a lot of this, I mean, we would all like to have writers would all like to have the financial experience of Stephen King or J.K. Rowling. Mm-hmm. We all would. But I think at the core, that's not why we write.
Right.
If that happens to be a byproduct, I mean, if they back the truck up, Brian, with the money,
right,
I'm not going to send them away.
Right.
But it's not the reason that I write. And the thing that I found out about writing, and when you asked me to come on this show and we talked about this, anyone can write and anyone can learn. See, writing for me is what comes from your spirit, from your soul. The technical stuff we can all be taught to do.
Right.
I think what makes a good writer is someone who has something they want to say, and a need to say it. Not again for the commercial value, but for the spiritual value.
Right. So, what would you say to someone that might be watching this that's saying, I want to be an author? Because I think within our community we have authors, we have doctors. We sometimes like to allow outside entities, and maybe for some regard, corporate America, to define who we are. So if a young person is watching this, what would you say? Like, how did you get started? Like, because you're living your life, you're in corporate America, and you said you were talking about the of corporate America, but also you still there's a part where there's a thought and then there's the action. So mm-hmm. Take us through how that becomes an action.
Well, I would say there's two components to this. I always enjoyed writing, but I didn't know to what extent. I mean, back in high school, I wrote some short stories that got some notoriety within the school, but nobody was there to encourage me to say, hey, you could do something with this.
Right.
And so it was something that was, provided me some, it pleased me to do it, right? And provided some value for me to sit down and create. I mean, there's nothing more extraordinary to me than taking a blank piece of paper and filling it up with pictures and ideas, because that's what words do. They create ideas, they create value. And so how I started getting into writing as a publication, the job that I had that I left when I wrote this book. Mm-hmm. And I came home one day, I told my wife I couldn't do it anymore. And
so you're saying you walked away from the job?
Yeah. Yeah, I came home one day and I said to her, I can't do this anymore. And she said, what? And matter of fact, some of my friends suggested that maybe she thought you was talking about her, right? But, and she said, what? And we talked about it, and she said, listen, don't do it. So I went in the next day and gave my notice. Matter of fact, she encouraged me to, because I said no, and she said, if you think about this too long, you'll think about me, you won't do this. Go in, give your notice. Next day I did.
But all right, so take us through that. What was going on that it was so overwhelming? To the point where you wrote a book about it. Well, most people just leave their job, but you sat down and you spent some time.
A lot of time, bro. I was angry, bro. I went for the interview for this job. And they had two phases of the interview. I first met with some supervisors. And, I clearly had the technical expertise they needed. I was the right fit for the job in terms of temperament and knowledge and all that. But they needed somebody who was willing to work a lot of overtime. So in the preliminary interview, they asked what I thought about overtime. And I said, listen, every job, there's going to be times that you need to put in more time. I get that. And I said, and I don't have a problem with that. I said, however, if you need somebody who's going to work overtime regularly, I'm not your guy, because I have a life, right? And so they said, okay, and they brought it up. And so I got a call a week later. I had made it to the second level of interviews. Now I'm interviewing with the manager. He brought up the overtime again. And I'm not that bright, Brian, because I should have seen, the writing on the wall. And so he went to saying, well, you can do the work from home. I have a specific arrangement for this function that, I can pay you for the work you do at home. And I said, listen, you offer me a job. We're going to negotiate salary. I'm going to budget my life on that salary. So it's not about the money, because you're asking me to trade my time for it, and the time is going to be more valuable.
Right.
So, and I said, I understand if that's your need, I'm just not the guy. Great interview. So a week later, they call me, give me the job, right? 5 weeks later, Brian, I'm working overtime. I'm working overtime every single day. I'm taking work home every night. I'm working Saturdays and Sundays. So I go to see the manager, and I said, listen, we had this discussion. I know we're working on it, because the corporate, the carrot, the dangling of the carrot suggests, listen, we got you now. You got that paycheck. You need that paycheck.
Right.
You're going to do whatever we tell you, and after, I did it for about a year. Actually, a little less than a year. I was burnt out. All I was doing was working. So I quit. I went home and I wrote this book. But I tell you what, the book is a lot nicer. My wife said, listen, let's write it so other people will want to read it, because I was throwing daggers. And I think all my years of the frustrations, and I suggested right up front that those are personal. But all my years of personal frustrations in that environment came out in this little book. And I didn't sell a lot of them, but they've been well received.
Right. So that's the part I was about to get into. So you got the book, you got the two books, and how do you make the book into a money making entity, or to get people to read it, or because like with anything, there's competition.
Sure.
I think that drives America, and I don't think it's a bad thing. So, and reading a book takes time.
Yeah.
So how do you get the information to the readers? I know coming on a show like this will help, but other than that, how does someone promote a book?
Some of the things that I haven't done yet need to be done. You alluded to the other day, everything's happening on the internet. I received a call from New Jersey. My book ended up in New Jersey, and the guy called me up and he said, listen, a lot of people here want to get this book, but I went on the internet and I couldn't find it.
Right.
How do I get the book? Well, you have to come through me, right? And so, and that was a manner to the greater profit level, is if I have a successful grassroots effort, because I have the books printed, and then it's the least expensive way to create them. However, the marketing, the grassroots effort is not the most efficient way to get it out there. So we're trying to do different things. We're actually working right now with Amazon to get this on the internet, and it'll probably be available through Amazon probably by the middle to the end of this month. Now it's November. I've done readings at libraries. I've done readings at book fairs, an opportunity to get the word out. I also initially, and I think this is true for any venture, when I first develop these or buy or print these books, I give some away strategically,
right,
to places where it'll come up in conversation, coffee and tea type conversations,
right,
because through all the technology we have, word of mouth is still the greatest marketing tool there is.
right.
Because if I tell you, yo, Brian, man, listen, they coming out with this new, this new phone, and you're a technical person, really, let me tell you about this phone I got,
right,
and you value, well, I value his opinion. You might not buy it, but you'll look at it,
right.
And so that's been the biggest way so far, is word of mouth. I've done pretty well with the newest book. I've, my initial distribution of books or purchase of books is almost exhausted. I'm going to have to purchase new ones soon.
All right. Now, you brought up the second book, and we touched upon it a little bit, and I did want to get back to, it's about the disease of addiction. And, in the African American community, the urban community, that unfortunately is like woven into the lives of just about anyone in the community. So if you could just give us a little bit more, expound upon what the book is about. I know it's about addiction, but what did you write about addiction? Your experience or others' experience?
First of all, it's a compilation really of, I've been around addiction last 25 years in terms of the recovery side of it, not just the using side. What makes this book unique, and I've read several books on people's stories about redemption and recovery from addiction. What makes this book unique is that it also provides an education. See, the disease of addiction tells the story, and it tells the story from this person's beginnings, where they had all of the opportunities available to them. It wasn't a person who grew up in the Ville or Square. Mm-hmm. This was a person who came from means, had everything available to her, ended up becoming an addict. And in the course of this, and I don't want to give away the premise of the book, but she gets together with a high school student who had the world ahead of him. And her addiction ends up taking him down as well. And so sometimes what we think is real is not real. See, all the people that we see out there that's using drugs or selling drugs, right? The stories are always deeper than what we see on the surface.
Right.
So I make the statement in this book throughout that the answer to addiction is love. I believe that love is the answer to pretty much everything. I think everything is in some essence a love story.
What about corporate America? Do they need more love?
They do. They do, bro. Listen, we need to love. I was asked this question. A lady asked me, she said, so you think that love can resolve everything? And I said, yes. And she said, well, I disagree. And I said, on what level? And she said, well, you might love a person, and you might have all this love for that person, but they can't reciprocate that love. And I said, well, you thinking love of outside of you. The love has to start with you.
Right.
Because if you loved yourself, there would be things you wouldn't do. I smoked cigarettes since I was 10 years old. And a few years ago, I looked at that and I asked, how much did I really care about myself? See, when I stopped using drugs, part of it was about society and family. It took me a minute to get to where it was about me. Mm-hmm. And I think that when a person learns to love themselves, everything else becomes possible. Including, again, you brought me on because my experience with writing and becoming an author, and I'm hoping that at one point to be able to pass those skills on or some of those lessons on to other people. But this was an effort of self-discovery, an opportunity to have the confidence in myself to say, you know what, I can do this. Right. You know what, there's nothing special about me. Right, what makes me special, I think, as an author is I enjoy doing it. I've gotten great feedback on this new book because people who read it, most of us have had some personal experience or know somebody who's having a problem or had a problem with drug addiction. And then this talks about drugs, but it really talks about the nature of addiction, the disease of addiction, and talks about everything in this book, and very educational.
Right. One of the things I ask the guests always is, as you go forward in your life, do you see yourself writing some more, or you're in corporate America? You mentioned that, so do you kind of feel like doing the thing, just take this job and shove it and like blaze the glory, like leaving that environment, or what's your dreams moving forward?
I am going to get out of the corporate environment in that capacity. My goal is to ultimately make enough money as a writer where I can support my own ventures, which would include teaching others how to do it. I'm talking about young folks who have all this emotion and spirit inside. Let's help them get it out.
Right.
Let's help them use it therapeutically. And maybe in between that, we'll find some Langston Hugheses and some Vern Mitchell, some people who really have some ability to say what they want to say. I'm also right now, in terms of, in addition to being working full-time, I'm a full-time student, working at my bachelor's degree, an endeavor I began 40 years ago.
Right.
I'm trying to finalize today, so because I think education is the key, but the learning, not about the book so much as about learning about me, and I'm doing that through the college experience as well.
That's great, Vern. Thank you for coming in today.
All right, thank you for having me, Brian.
Your input. And I know we're still live. So
Okay.
I made that mistake early on in this process, but it was a great interview and get the feedback from you.
Okay.
And